The Dark Heart of Skyrim. That's the theme behind this year of updates for the Elder Scrolls Online. In it, players head to Skyrim to visit well-known locations, discover new ones, and unveil the mysteries of a dark gothic story of witches, vampires, and werewolves. Like previous years, this is a series of content updates broken up and released throughout the year. Back in March, they rolled out the Horrorstorm Dungeon DLC, which added 2 new dungeons, Ice Reach and the Unhallowed Grave, and with it, new gear sets, collectibles, and the beginning of the story for the Dark Heart of Skyrim. And this week marks the PC launch of the Greymoor Chapter. This is the biggest update of the year, adding what is said to be roughly 40 hours of new content, including new locations, quests, dungeons, trials, and gear sets, among other things. Now, given that this is the major release update for ESO this year, with the biggest and most substantial amount of new content, I wanted to go over all the new stuff that's being added and changes coming to the game, just see what's new and whether or not it's worth going back, because I really enjoyed my revisit to ESO earlier in 2020, and I'm curious if I should jump back in. So let's go ahead and cover what is new with the Greymoor Chapter update launching today. Primarily adding a new main story quest line where we set out to stop a vampire lord from enslaving all of Tamriel, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume now that we're successful in that endeavor. Now with that, we get the entirely new playable area of Western Skyrim and Blackreach. Western Skyrim will not be a one-for-one copy of the areas in the Elder Scrolls V, although you will get to explore well-known locations like the City of Solitude, Morthal, and Dragonbridge, and Blackreach has actually been expanded upon and is now this massive subterranean zone that makes up nearly 40% of all of the newly added landmass. Now, you might be curious why this isn't exactly like the Skyrim in the Elder Scrolls V, and the reason is that this one takes place roughly 1,000 years before the events of Skyrim, so you should expect things to be a little bit different, along with the inclusion of some brand new locations. There's also going to be the addition of a new endgame raid, Kyne's Aegis, a massive 12-player trial that has players battling hordes of monstrous raiders and 3 challenging bosses. There are new public events called Horrorstorms, which are supernatural storms plaguing Western Skyrim, draining the life energy of anyone caught within. And then, of course, what we expect with a new landmass, there will be new delves, public dungeons, world bosses, and some side story missions. There's also 6 new armor sets coming, collectibles, achievements, items, and a host of new things. Now, one of the biggest additions that's coming with the Greymoor Chapter is the Antiquities. This is a new in-game activity where you uncover lost artifacts across Tamriel. Basically, it's a treasure discovery system. First, you'll be scrying for and then excavating ancient artifacts, and both of these are done by playing these new series of mini-games. Quite the distinct look they decided to go for with that scrying mini-game. I mean, it looks very sci-fi, if I'm being quite honest. It doesn't really look like it fits in the Elder Scrolls universe, but really, that's not the biggest of deals. So along with these new mini-games, there will 2 new skill lines for scrying and excavation both, and as you level those up, you'll be able to find better rewards, and the rewards can include things like gold, trophies, furnishing, cosmetics, mounts, gear, and the brand new addition, which is mythic items. Now, these mythic items are very strong, high-rarity gear pieces that have unique properties. A couple of good examples that I saw in a recent Hack the Minotaur video. If you're even remotely interested in checking out ESO, be sure to check out these guys' vids. They're very, very good. But he showcased 2 of them, one of which was this ring that increases your damage by 25%, but removes your ability to crit, and then these boots that make you immune to roots and snares, but also prevent you from sprinting in combat. So as you can tell by these 2 examples, they really look to add some interesting effects that can really change up gameplay, and I could certainly see some pretty interesting builds revolving around these mechanics. I mean, those are some pretty drastic measures. A flat, massive increase to damage but while removing crits, and then you can never be rooted or snared, but you also can't sprint. As you expect, there are drawbacks, but there's also some massive benefits. And then also worth noting that with the mythic item system, it's something that other RPG and loot games have done before, where you can only have 1 equipped at a time because they are considered just that powerful. So just to recap, earlier this year, they released the Horrorstorm DLC with 2 new dungeons, gear sets, and collectibles, and then now we are getting the Greymoor Chapter with the new playable areas of Skyrim, Blackreach, a main story questline, side quests, public events, delves, dungeons, a 12-player trial, 6 new armor sets, the Antiquities system, and mythic items. Now, besides the DLC and the chapter update, there's also some big changes coming with this update that will be applied to the base game. That includes a revamp to the vampire and werewolf skill lines, with werewolf werewolves getting a few skill improvements, making them a more viable build, and vampires actually saw a complete overhaul, introducing not only some brand new skills, but a brand new ultimate as well. And there's also been a balance update for the monster sets in the game. Monster sets are these head and shoulder pieces with really strong bonuses that you would collect from various dungeons. And I believe what I've heard is that nearly every single monster set is getting rebalanced, either increasing or decreasing their power, basically depending on how popular they were. So what are we not getting in the Greymoor chapter and with this year of updates? Well, much to many of the player base's chagrin, there is no new class, there's no new weapon skill line, there were no real massive combat updates. You know, the combat gets referenced quite often as one of the negatives of ESO, and one of those biggest complaints really revolve around this light attack weaving that you have to do in between casting of all of your abilities. You know, it's a skill to be acquired, and it is a mechanic that exists in this game and makes it so that it separates the people who can do it very well and can't, with a pretty massive DPS difference. Something about it just doesn't feel right, and also doesn't really look right with the game's animations. So the Greymoor chapter launching this week is actually the second of 4 updates for the year, and still coming up in quarter 3, there will be another dungeon DLC that should be happening in August, and then in quarter 4, around November, a new story zone DLC is coming as well. So you might be curious, Force, okay, there's all these DLCs and chapter updates and all this stuff, like what do I have to pay for? Do I get any of this for free if I just own ESO? Well, there is a free prologue available in the game. If you own the base game, you basically can begin the story that is added in the Greymoor chapter. You'll get to experience 2 missions that will take you into the depths of Blackreach to confront the schemes of the nefarious Ice Reach Coven. How exciting. And you also don't have to pay for the updates that are coming to the vampire and werewolf skill lines or the monster set revamp. All of that is just getting rolled right into the base game. But beyond that, everything else that I've mentioned that was added in the Horrorstorm DLC and the Greymoor chapter has to be purchased. Now, with that said, I should talk about ESO Plus. So, you know, you buy the Elder Scrolls Online, you can just play it with that base purchase and, you know, unlock DLCs in different areas as you go. But they do have a subscription option in ESO Plus that actually grants you quite a bit. It gives you access to all of the DLC. So the Horrorstorm dungeon update from earlier this year, as well as the dungeon and story DLCs that are coming in quarter 3 and quarter 4, that would be rolled into your monthly subscription. ESO Plus also gives you a craft bag with unlimited storage, doubles your bank space, gives you a 10% bonus to gold and experience gain, and a handful of other really nice quality of life features. No, I'm not trying to convince you to buy ESO Plus, but I think you should know about it, because if you're gonna play ESO and you really like it, there's some pretty huge benefits. And it's also worth mentioning because, frankly, what I did when I jumped back in this year is I didn't buy any of the DLC. There's like 1,000 DLCs at this point and a bunch of chapter updates. I didn't go and buy all of those piecemeal. Just for the couple of months that I was playing, I paid the monthly subscription for ESO Plus and I got access to all of that. But it gets kind of confusing because it only gives you access to all of the DLC and not the chapter updates. So as I mentioned, the way ESO patches work, I guess you could say, or content updates work, is that they have a major theme throughout the year and then it is released in several DLCs and one chapter update, with the chapter update notably always including like that new explorable playable area and a bunch of new dungeons and raids and stuff. But the DLCs are included in ESO Plus, but the chapters aren't. It's very confusing. I don't know why they decided to, like, well, I do know why, money, but you know, whatever. Anyways, you should know about ESO Plus. No, I'm not telling you to buy it. In fact, what I would suggest is if you jump into ESO for the first time, don't buy anything but the base game. And that's where I want to go with wrapping this up. Should you buy the Greymoor chapter? First, I should mention that thanks to the level scaling changes that they added back in the 1 Tamriel update, new or returning players can jump straight into the new content. So if you're just jumping into the game and you want to check out Skyrim and ESO, you don't have hundreds of hours of leveling that you have to do. You can make a new account as a level 1 player and jump straight into the Skyrim portion that they're adding in the Greymoor chapter. With that said, I will tell you that the content available in the base game easily provides hundreds of hours, things to explore and do, and it's pretty good stuff. Like the end game gearing is a pretty flat power in this. So basically, all of the new gear and stuff that they're adding in the Greymoor chapter and the dungeon DLCs, the new gear sets that come with that, they aren't like bump up in a strength necessarily. They're more like side grades. There's essentially a max CP level to gear. I'm trying to remember, it's been a couple months, but I think it's CP 160. And once you're at that point, that's basically the cap of the strength of gear. It's just the set bonuses that you get off of that will be different depending on what DLCs you have unlocked and have access to gear sets. You could just buy the base game, level up to the max level, go through your champion point grind, and get CP 160 gear, and you would be relatively just as strong as other people. Now, obviously, there's arguments about, like, are some of the DLC and chapter set bonuses much better than the base game set bonuses? I would say it's arguable. I'm sure min-maxers would argue that there probably are. I don't know the fine granular details so much of that, even though I played for months and months. There's so much in this game, but the point being, you could just buy the base ESO, jump in, and get hundreds of hours of content, get to max level, and have very strong, comparable, competitive gear, but you won't have access to all of the gear. So I would say that if you haven't played ESO and you're interested in jumping in, or if any of this new stuff piqued your interest, don't go straight into it. Get the base game, it's pretty cheap at this point, and just play what's available there and get the most enjoyment that you can. And if you're like a couple hundred hours in and you're really loving it and you want to keep on playing and you want to check out Western Skyrim and you want to see these new dungeons and stuff, then maybe at that point consider buying ESO Plus or purchasing the Greymoor Chapter. But I wouldn't suggest doing it outright really for any chapters in ESO, because there's just so much available in the base game that you should decide if you like it before you spend that extra money. That would at least be my suggestion to anyone considering jumping in for this stuff. There you go, a bit of a overview of the Greymoor Chapter update that's launching this week for ESO. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to jump in right away. I'm still a bit tied up with World of Warcraft at the moment, and still dabbling in playing some Warzone. Surprisingly, you know, I really like FPS games. I really like Battle Royale games. This one's been sticking around for quite a while, and I'm still having a lot of fun with it. But anyways, you don't care about that. You were just here for the ESO update, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. I got my hairs cut. See, so I don't have to wear the hat anymore. I could just do my hair like this. You guys like it? Is this stupid? It's fucking stupid. Yeah, I know.